If you want to play at the highest level, you need to eat like it. Today, we're digging into what it takes to compete at the pro level with Hannah Boyl, head sports dietitian for Houston Dynamo FC. We're talking about the biggest nutrition mistakes athletes make, nutrition for female athletes, and what you need to do now if you want to compete at the next level. So, welcome back to the Student Athlete Performance Podcast, where we help athletes unlock their full potential through better training, better nutrition, and a better mindset. I'm your host, Nick Lemke, and today we're joined by Hannah, the head sports dietitian for Houston Dynamo and owner of High Performing Human Nutrition. She's worked with pro athletes, and today she's here to help you. So, Hannah, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Of course.
Of course.
So let's first start with just talking about your experience with Houston Dynamo. So, you know, you've been working with them 2 years full time and then a couple years kind of part-time-ish. And so what would you say are some of the biggest lessons you've learned about fueling at that highest level?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I've learned as a practitioner is that you really have to meet people where they are. Even, have professional athletes, but you also have to understand that they're still human, and the best practitioners will understand that, and they will be able to have conversations with athletes to where they understand that the athlete's preferences and restrictions and those types of things come first, and then you build upon the diet from there.
Yeah. So what about in terms of seeing the athletes and seeing them at those highest levels? What do you tend to find they're lacking the most nutrition-wise?
I think what happens is that they end up eating carbohydrates, but they don't necessarily understand how much they need. So they're consuming the carbohydrates and they're like, yeah, I understand that they're important, but the capacity at which they need it, especially in a more endurance type environment like professional soccer, it's definitely maybe underestimated a little bit.
Yeah. So what do you feel like they tend to overshoot on then?
They tend to think they need way more protein than they need. I do have some, everybody's different, but for the most part, we serve our meals and I can kind of see the guys like going through our buffet line, and they, are picking up their protein, and we talk about serving sizes a lot because looking at, okay, you don't need 2 pieces of steak. This is also a conversation that I've had with my chefs is to, okay, what we want to do is we want to create an environment where we're also setting up our players for success. So cutting the protein into appropriate portion sizes for them, and that's how we serve it, is one thing that we've done kind of to move towards that better portion control.
Yeah. And I mean, again, we see it. I mean, I see it at the high school. I mean, this is the reason I work with high schoolers. I'm like, y'all need to fix this now because it's going to make it a lot easier later. If you're speaking to high school and even middle school athletes, what would be 3 nutrition habits you feel like they should really build now to separate themselves at the college and the pro levels?
Yeah. So it was great because in my residency program, I had the opportunity to work with like high school and middle school athletes. And so I got to see this firsthand a little bit. But first of all, like, don't skip meals. That's, number 1. Second of all, don't underestimate like the power of sleep. I know it's not necessarily nutrition related, but like that ties so much into when I think about nutrition in terms of if you don't get enough sleep, your body craves certain things, or you tend to maybe overeat on the foods that are not necessarily performance related. Not that they're bad foods, but they're just not helping you. So there's a connection between like your mentality and the foods that you gravitate towards and your sleep. And then also learning about how to frame your training sessions with food and even your any sort of competitive events. So learning about what types of foods need to come before and what types of foods need to come after. My mindset is that your preparation for your next training session or your next competitive event starts immediately after you end the current one. So the way that you recover is how you're preparing for the next bout of activity.
No, those are huge. I mean, yeah, sleep, that's, even though it's not nutrition related, I feel like we're always talking about it, mindset coaches addressing it, and then PTs are always stressing it too. Yeah. So hitting you at all angles. I actually just recorded a podcast, and part of it is it's about distractions and distractions and the impact on sleep and everything. And it's like, yeah, like all of that's going to hold you back. What about, so you talk about the pre and post and how important that fueling is. Do you have like, because this is something that I regularly, no matter what team I talk to, those are usually the first things I address. What would you say, like some of the athletes that you work with at Houston, what are some of those light bulb moments you've seen with some of those athletes in terms of when they shifted some of those things?
Yeah, I actually had an athlete come up to me yesterday. It's a new athlete to me. We're trying to figure out what his routine looks like with us in Houston. He's had different routines before. So we're trying out, we use different types of like flavored carbohydrate gels or electrolyte supplements. And he came up to me yesterday and he's like, all right, I know that I need to adjust how I'm preparing because that training session did not feel good. So for an athlete to be able to come up to me and like feel confident to tell me that this is going on and that in knowing that I can help him, that's huge for them to be able to understand that. And on the flip side of that, I started doing, it's kind of a pain for me, but all of my guys get personalized shakes right now during preseason every day. Once we get into the season, it'll be specific training days, but they're kind of now that I'm providing it to them and they really don't have a choice, they just grab it. They're catching on to how that even like snack or something in between their training session and their gym session is continuously benefiting them.
Yeah. Any benefits that they've mentioned, like, wow, I have more energy, or any specific ones like that you've heard?
We do body composition testing, and a lot of my guys, like a few of my guys that like were previously, like even before the season, consistently doing those like post training shakes, saw some of the greatest muscle mass changes over the course of the last year. So we had some like amazing changes with a couple of my guys, and I do truly feel like it's some of the adjustments that we made definitely helped with it.
Yeah, I mean that's huge. I do mine monthly now. I mean, it's not perfect. Do you guys do DEXA, or what do you guys
Yeah, we
use?
do DEXA.
Okay, so I mean that's like the gold standard. I just use the little what are they called, in bodies? With the little
Yeah, the
handles.
DIA. Yep.
Yeah, but I'm like, hey, at least it's a trend. But I mean, yeah, like I made adjustments to those of the timing and everything, and even in the last month I was like, hey, I went up in the right categories and went down in the right categories. So, and I mean, again, whether you're a non-athlete or athlete can definitely apply that. Now I want to take time today to definitely talk about the female athlete, because you have experience as a female athlete. First off, I'll let you share what your background is as a female athlete.
Yeah, so I grew up, I was a dancer of all genres starting at the age of 3. When I was 10 years old, I started dancing competitively. When I was 19, I started dancing professionally. So I was a dancer in the NBA for the Detroit Pistons for their 2014-2015 season. And then I worked with a choreographer on a couple of like independent films as well. So a lot of my experience does like fall into like professional sports, but in like the more of like the entertainment category.
Yeah, which I think is, again, huge though, because I mean, I've had, dance teams or parents or cheerleading teams parents, talk to me about certain things even just last night, and a lot of them struggle with, with, as a female athlete, a lot of them are under fueling either on purpose or just without even realizing it. Can you first break down like low energy availability and why it's a problem for the athlete?
Yeah, so low energy availability, the biggest thing like to put out there is it doesn't always necessarily happen on purpose. You don't necessarily always know that you're, like yes, you can go into saying I'm either going to exercise more or eat less. So there's, 2 different ways that you can show that calorie deficit, or you can either reduce more calories by reducing food or increase your calorie output by increasing exercise. And that can be done on purpose. However, also some people just don't understand what their body needs. So sometimes depending on schedules, people don't have time to eat enough calories, or their schedule, if they think they are already doing what they need to do, then they think that things like fatigue or or even aches and pains and chronic injury is all part of like the process of just being an athlete. And the reality is those things, it impacts your whole system. So not having enough energy in order to do your daily tasks, let alone do your sporting task, is going to impact your mood. It's going to impact your brain function. It's going to impact how you perform at your given sport. It's going to impact even your gut health. It's going to impact your cardiac health. It's amazing when we look at the bigger picture what happens to our bodies in that instance, because when you get into this mismatch, this calorie unbalance, you end up being in a spot where you're doing this activity and your body is pulling energy for the activity. So you have to fuel that. Like you're telling your body to go. So at the end of the day, when your body's trying to recover and it doesn't have any energy to do that, like you just being alive takes energy. So if you're using all of that energy on your activity and then you come to the end of the day and you don't have any like rest and recovery energy, then you end up really decreasing how well your body can prepare for the next day, how well your body can just take care of itself.
Yeah. So, yeah, and I mean, it's a lot of male athletes, I will say, struggle with this. Again, it's more on the unintentional side, and I really want to stress that to the middle school, high schooler, because that's where a lot of athletes coming into my program, they struggle with that type of stuff. How can an athlete identify like that they're underfueling?
Yeah,
Or a
I
parent?
think yeah.
Sorry.
So think about this. If you're not eating 3 full meals in a day and at least like 1 or 2 snacks, you're probably underfueling. If you are feeling, yes, sport ends up making you, tired, you're probably going to be sore, you're adapting to training sessions, yes. But if you're tired every day, if you have trouble staying awake like in classes, or if you notice that, every week you have some like tweak or some sort of irritation, maybe not necessarily like a significant injury, but something is going on, those are all signs for me that you should probably dig a little bit deeper and make sure nutrition isn't the culprit.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's those little things. Yeah, it can be. And what about for the parent? Like if their athlete's not expressing the things, like is there anything they might be able to catch?
Yeah, so I mean, the parent sees a lot, but also unfortunately, like when kids are at school or practice, they don't necessarily see those things. But if your athlete is coming home from a practice and they're like, I'm not hungry, or just eating a small amount, or if it's after, it's tough because especially with kids in school, like sometimes these games and stuff are later at night. And if, kids come home and they're just like so exhausted, they want to go straight to bed. I really encourage parents to like push the right types of foods towards their athlete after those things. So if you're if a parent is going to an activity or driving their athlete home from some sort of activity, like having those things like on the way home is super beneficial to make sure that you get it in. But also just making sure that the parents are communicating with their athletes about like what types of foods the athlete wants to have in the house. So sometimes kids will say to me, there's nothing to eat at my house. And I highly doubt that. However, it's one of those things where you just kind of have to like flip the script. Okay, there's nothing that they feel like eating at the house. So how do we get them to eat something?
What would you say? What are some top post game snacks or meals from your athletes? Because I know, I mean, some of those games can be late as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So we always, provide a post match meal to our guys. They of course, like after a game, they tend to love like some of like, they're always asking me for pizza and burgers and those types of things. And I will give it to them sometimes because, for me, here's the thing. If they want a burger and I can provide to them like a lean beef, whole grain bun, something like that with fruit on the side or something, and they actually eat it, versus me trying to give them like salmon and broccoli and
Quinoa.
rice. Yeah, exactly. Quinoa. My guys hate quinoa. So rather than me trying to give them that and them not eating it all, I know that they're getting some sort of nutrition in them. And if my guys don't eat the post-match meal, especially like when we're at home, I know that they're going to like Whataburger, or they're going to like got one kid that like says sometimes he'll just go to Waffle House. Like, so I would rather know what they're getting put in their body. And, again, like sometimes it's late. So if they choose just opt to not go get anything, like that's a problem as well.
Yeah.
So I would rather know what they're putting in their bodies. Like, guys, I mean, one thing that we do often is like, especially being in Houston, we have a lot of great Mexican food or, any type of Latino food. So we do like tacos, fajitas, like bowls, those kinds of things that the guys really enjoy.
Yeah. No, I mean, those are good. And if it's something where, I know a lot of parents get worried about like, oh, well, like I want them to be able to sleep or whatever. And it's like, well, it doesn't have to be this massive meal,
No.
Protein, carbs, keep it lean, keep it, depending on the time frame. But like, I like that you commented in the car. Any opportunities, use as much of that time as you can, for sure. So I want to, again, with the female athlete background as a dancer, I definitely want to address like the scale and weight and appearance and all of that. And so what would you tell dancers, cheerleaders, and these other sports that are more appearance focused about how fueling can really change their performance?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, like I know from experience, especially like in this like in the sport entertainment industry, like there is so much that depends on how you look. When I like again, this was 10 years ago now, but when I was dancing for the NBA, like that was, I mean, part of your audition was like, okay, we want you to wear this specific thing because we want to see how you look. Or there are specific uniforms. You need to look a certain way in these uniforms. If the uniform doesn't look good on you, you don't go out on the court. So I actually struggled with that a lot, and that's actually what led me to sports nutrition. So for me, I was a full-time student at the time, and based on my location, my university where I had a scholarship that I didn't want to give up, and the location of our practice facility and our games, I had quite a long commute. So here I am commuting, then going to practice, sometimes like working, on off hours, to continue to, pay rent and stuff. And I was also not fueling my body correctly because I had no idea about any of it. And unfortunately, the space that I grew up in, like, your dance studios don't necessarily have the same resources as your, high schools do. And depending on where you grow up, like I grew up in a very like rural community. So like even our high schools didn't have resources. So I literally had no idea. And it came down to the fact that like I would have to like I was so like underfueled. I would have to stop on my way home from school at a rest stop and like take a nap because like I just couldn't I couldn't do it. I just knew I was like I am like something's going on. So with the whole body composition thing and then trying to figure out like what's best, I ended up like I was vegetarian for 6 months because I had a friend that was vegan at the time and like that was like the next best thing. And then I'm trying like all these supplements but at the same time, I'm out here like getting my new like hydration from like Mountain Dew and coffee and not taking care of my body. So at the end of the day, it's really like just finding resources for the basics. And like I said, like that's the reason why I became a sports dietitian is because I saw that was like that is such something that is lacking in like especially my industry. And that's why I still have my private practices because yes, I'm serving the professional athlete in a place where we're continuing to grow as a field and continuing to improve, but I know that there's still like that subgroup out there that doesn't even know like what is possible. And I think that you really have to, it's tough because there's such a mental block there of you want me to eat more to perform better, but that goes against everything I've ever heard or everything I've ever done. It's such a big win when I can get athletes to budge even a little bit and they have like a small win and they start to trust me a little bit more. So we add in like an applesauce like before their practice and they feel a little bit better. Or I get them to increase their calories by 150 a day. And we start to see that like the fatigue starts to go away and then they start to like trust me a little bit more. And then, you know, the rest is history and it improves so much. But I think that anybody in that situation should just be aware that we are not here just because we think you need to eat more, because we are going off of like these random numbers that, a calculator spits out. We're literally trying to help you perform better. And there's always the caveat is if you start to feel worse or if you perform worse, we will make changes. It's not the end all be all like, hey, this is your goal and like this is what it's going to be. It's unfortunately like nutrition isn't an exact science because everybody is, everybody's DNA is different. Everybody's going to handle foods differently. So it's a little bit of trial and error. But I think that is the biggest thing is knowing that the resource is there, which is our battle is getting out there, but then also being willing to trust somebody to help you.
Yeah. Well, and that's huge that you highlight even just something small. Like, I think it's, sometimes with parents, it's like, well, I want them to eat their fruits and vegetables. Like, let's give it time. They may not experience. Let's get those wins, like you said, those quick wins, like the applesauce. Like you start seeing that you perform better. Yeah, like obviously there's going to be more buy-in there, and so start with those things that are going to move the needle for you the most.
Absolutely.
Now, on the as well in the female athlete side, but also into some of your other backgrounds. So, I mean, you have the exercise science background, but I also know you were doing CrossFit for a bit there.
Yes.
Are you still doing CrossFit?
I've transitioned more into Olympic weightlifting, a little bit of CrossFit. So after I was pregnant last year, and then since postpartum, it's just been like more lifting than anything. But yeah, I still dabble.
Yeah. So a lot of female athletes tend to shy away from lifting weights, don't want to get bulky and all those types of things. Speaking to somebody who has literally like lifted on a regular basis themselves, what's your advice to these athletes?
I am the female athlete that wishes I could gain more muscle. So I swear to you, if it was really the case where, females could just like get on, like I would love if that was the case, where we could just like lift up a barbell and the muscle was there, but it is not the case. And I train hard multiple times a week. And I mean, like I have the muscle tone, but I'm definitely like not as muscular as like I would like to be. So there's that, first of all. But I think it's so important, and this is even something like, for example, I worked with like female runners, and I'm trying to help female runners understand the importance of the strength component, especially those that tend to get injured more frequently. And it's and even our soccer guys, like they're in the gym multiple times a week because that's how we reduce injury risk. We do the gym stuff, and it's not like, if you're doing sport specific training, you don't have to be in the gym for an hour 5 days a week. Maybe you go do 20 minutes of intentional work that is accessory to or complementary to what you're doing in your sport. And it's only going to help you get better, because those guys that are diligent in the gym for us are also the guys that are the ones that, they do their stretches, they do activation exercises, they do their gym. And those are the ones that are the most robust, that if they do get injured, they're quick to come back. So there's a whole different component to the gym other than just like, let's go lift weights and get big.
Yeah. No, I really like that answer. And that's why I could tell, even though like this is literally our first time guys, like talking to each other, like, and I had a sense that she would have a really good answer for that. So what other like key pieces of advice you would leave for, we'll start with the female athletes specifically.
Yeah. Female athletes, I think it's don't get in your head too much. The brain is a powerful thing and it's great, but also sometimes like we overthink things. If you are not feeling good, it never hurts to reach out to somebody. And this is, for female athletes, if you need to reach out to somebody, but it kind of in general, like look for those people that have the right education. And this is also something that unfortunately in our world, like nutrition, everybody eats. So everybody thinks that they can speak on how to eat. So look for a registered dietitian, look for somebody that is certified in what they do. In the United States, a registered dietitian is the professional that you want to go to. Even better, if you're in sport, even better if they have a certified specialist in sports dietetics credential. But don't be afraid to reach out. Like literally, you can send me a message on Instagram, and I would respond. And a lot of us are like that because we literally, like I said, the reason why I do what I do is because I felt stuck. So I want to continue to help those people that feel stuck. And we get into this cycle of like body composition, and I need to look a certain way, and I need to make sure that I'm eating enough, but I'm not eating too much, and it makes you insane. So therefore I would just say, like, don't be afraid to find somebody and reach out to them. It doesn't necessarily mean you need to like go get a referral to go see, a dietitian like in an outpatient facility, but don't be afraid to reach out because a lot of us are willing to help.
Yeah. No, that's huge. And yeah, I really like somebody who actually understands sports nutrition, especially because like you said, like going to a clinic, yeah, might help, but I think, you're going to get much more personalized guidance from somebody in sports. And then, find somebody who you connect with. Like, you may not connect with me, you may connect with
Right.
Hannah better, or whoever it might be. So yeah,
And that's
that's
the
huge.
thing. I think if you find a practitioner that says, hey, I don't think I'm a good fit for you, or we're not a good fit, or I don't like, that's not my specialty, but I know who is, that is somebody that you can trust.
That's good. That's good. Couple last little quick hitters. I don't typically do this, but I mean, nutrition, it's fun. What's one of your best pregame meals, either for you or for your athletes?
Yeah. So when I would compete in CrossFit, I would always like my go-to would always be overnight oats. So I would do like oats. I do either almond milk or oat milk. Just throw some almond butter in there and berries. That was my go-to.
Simple.
Yes, exactly.
What about supplements? What's one supplement that's actually worth it?
Creatine all day.
I was thinking we're on the same page.
Yep. Creatine has the most research. Creatine is going to help almost everybody, and very few people have negative reactions to it.
Yeah. Just remember, for the guys who are listening, like, you can't just throw creatine at it. You still got to get the carbs and the protein and all the other jazz.
So here's a little tidbit. So think protein is actually going to help you. All right, let me reverse that. Creatine is going to help you in the gym be able to do more reps, to be able to provide more stress to your muscle. Protein is what's going to help you rebuild that muscle after your muscle is stressed. Because if you don't have protein, your body's just going to feel awful.
Yeah. And then the last one is biggest nutrition myth you wish would just disappear.
Gosh. Ooh, okay. I truly wish that anything related to cutting out food groups would disappear. Like, okay, so that, being like carnivore or keto, or even like opposite, like fruitarian, or like whatever, like it just needs to go away. Like there's nothing that says that cutting anything out is going to be beneficial. In fact, my mindset is always adding things in. So for example, like, okay, you want to accomplish A, we're going to add in B, and then let things kind of work out themselves out from there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's like sugar addiction. I'm like, yeah, if you have an addiction to sugar, eat more carbs. just different carbs.
But it's probably like, so I like said with the sleep thing, like your body craves sugar when you're tired because it needs to find energy somewhere.
Mhm.
Okay, so like there's a reason for it. Let's make an adjustment. So let's add more sleep.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, so many good things, and I really appreciate you taking the time, and especially again on the female athlete side, but also just in general, like seeing that big picture from somebody who's done, in a sense, pro sports, and who's also like been a dietitian
Yeah.
for pro athletes. So appreciate you hopping on.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And then for athletes, you can check Hannah's details in the show notes. She got your Instagram down there. And then, until next time, keep striving for greatness.